Hello and welcome to yet another episode of What to Read, and this time I'm going to talk to you about a topic that is discussed a lot in art and writing circles. That is about what to do with the art, the work of monstrous men, and no one has explained this better than in this particular article by Claire Dederer in Paris Review. She starts out by naming a lot of people who were named in Me Too and several other such abusive acts, and she then tries to list if there are women who are also considered to be monstrous female artists. She names a few and then she wonders whether or not the list is exhaustive, and then she goes back to naming the men again. She talks about writing this piece in 2017 when the Harvey Weinstein allegations and various other allegations had rocked the entire art and Hollywood world, and she talks about how she is in the process of writing something on Woody Allen and how that makes her feel watching Woody Allen's films in that particular context when all these allegations are being made. So she talks about how she has been a fan of Woody Allen, and when Woody Allen married his current wife as a young girl, at that time she felt somehow personally betrayed. So she wonders if her reaction is an emotional reaction. Then she goes on to talk about how she had put off watching Manhattan, which is a Woody Allen film where the central character, which is played by Woody Allen himself, is dating a 17-year-old, and she says that she put off watching it for her research work for the longest time, but eventually she had to watch it, and how it sort of made her feel a little uncomfortable. She talks about how Woody Allen's film presents this dichotomy between this innocent girl, the 17-year-old girl Tracy in that film, and women in the film. How the women are shown to be bitter women and women who are sullied by reality, and how Woody Allen's character is trying to reclaim some of the innocence of his life by being with this 17-year-old woman, and how none of the women in that film get that kind of an opportunity. So she talks about how she speaks to a lot of her friends who are also into art and are art critics, and tries to tell them that she's not feeling very comfortable about watching Manhattan, and how they try to dismiss the entire aspect that she brings up, saying that she's mixing her feelings with the film and that she's not being objective. Throughout the essay, she actually talks about how this collective we that is being mentioned whenever a work of an artist is being judged these days needs to be stripped down to I, and that audience is about I. Can I watch a film made by a person? Can I read a book made by a person who has been accused of wild things? And where does that leave me? She also touches briefly upon the fact that, as audience, this entire cancel culture and all of these things could possibly also be a way for us to deflect, because deep down all of us suspect at one time or the other whether we are actually the monsters, and so we deflect by saying that, look, it's not me, it's this other person who's really monstrous and has done wild things. She then goes on to talk about how women artists are considered monstrous, and she goes on to talk about how art in itself is a very selfish thing. To create art and to complete art, you need to be very selfish. You need to turn away from your family. It's a very lonely endeavor, and you have to be with yourself and by yourself completely and deprioritize everything else so that you can create that kind of art. And she goes on to show how women who complete art are criticized for abandoning their family, for abandoning their children. That is how female artists are described as monstrous. That she juxtaposes with how male artists are considered as monstrous, and those crimes or those failings as human beings are much higher than just not being the kind of mother that is expected from society. So she goes on to juxtapose these and wonders whether mere selfishness of women when it comes to not prioritizing their family over their art is being seen as monstrous, whereas when it comes to men, it is many, many horrible things. She ends this entire piece with Ernest Hemingway's girlfriend, Martha Gellhorn's quote, where she says that she had actually described that it is not the fact that the artist becomes a monster, it is the fact that the monster has to become an artist to survive, to actually show to the world that there is some point in them existing, because unless they produce that particularly great art, no one is going to accept them. And she then ends talking about the dilemma continues as to whether or not we should be watching, we should be listening, we should be reading art produced by people who have behavioral issues. The question is still unanswered, but the way she goes about the whole thing makes for interesting reading, and is perhaps the most comprehensive reading that I have read till now about what should you do if you like the art of someone who's been accused of vile things.